Okay, so, um, have you ever heard of a book called Atlas Shrugged?
Oh, absolutely. Quite a tome.
Right? 1,000 pages about, well, capitalists.
Not exactly light reading.
But get this, it's been a bestseller for, like, forever. Still
Yeah.
sells millions of copies. Wild.
That really is. Speaks to the power of well, Ayn Rand's vision.
Ayn Rand, the
Yeah.
woman behind the book, and her life. It's just as fascinating. You send over this NPR podcast about her, and, well, I was hooked.
It's a story that grabs you.
Let's do a deep dive into it.
Okay, so where do we begin?
I guess, well, the beginning. Before Ayn Rand, there was Elisa Rosenbaum.
Ah, yes. 1905, St. Petersburg, Russia. Imagine this.
Yeah.
Young Elisa, comfortable Jewish family, then boom.
The Bolshevik Revolution.
Exactly, it changes everything.
I mean, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
See your whole world just, like, collapse.
This is for her family, their business. Gone. Seized. Strangers living in their home.
And her dad.
So full of life before, just utterly crushed by it all.
Wow. It's like a brutal lesson in what happens when the collective overpowers the individual.
Right. Ayn Rand saw that firsthand, the dangers of it, the weight of that kind of state.
So it makes sense that later on she becomes this fierce individualist.
Right. Distrustful of anything that even hints at controlling people, limiting their freedom.
She sees the power in individual will, self-reliance.
And in 1926, she gets out, escapes to America, and reinvents herself.
Ayn Rand is born.
Leaving the past behind, making a statement with that new name.
New name, new world.
Yeah.
And where does she end up?
Hollywood, of course.
Like the land of dreams and ambition, perfect fit, almost.
Right. But even there, ideological clashes awaited her.
Is the Depression era.
And the labor movement in America, well, it didn't sit well with her at all.
All that collective action going against everything she believed in.
Fueling her writing, you could say, driving her to become this champion for capitalism, for American liberty.
And that leads us to her first big success, The Fountainhead, in 1943.
Howard Rourke, that architect who refuses to compromise. Powerful stuff.
Speaking to people who felt lost after the war, searching for meaning.
And this is where her philosophy, objectivism, really takes shape.
Reason above all. Self-interest as a virtue.
It's a whole new way of thinking about things.
And then 10 years later, bam!
Yeah.
Atlas Shrugged hits the scene.
1957. A dystopia, right? The world falls apart without those who create and innovate.
The capitalists.
And it makes her an icon. Controversial, sure, but an icon nonetheless.
Atlas Shrugged. I mean, it wasn't just some book, right?
Oh, no. This was a phenomenon. People were, they were really moved by it.
It sparked a movement almost. People who loved it, like really loved it, and the people who hated it, well.
Strong reactions either way. You're right. No middle ground.
That's kind of how you know it's powerful, though.
Right.
Like, it makes you feel something.
Definitely. It gets to something, I think, fundamental about, like, human nature, that pull between, what you want to achieve and what society needs from you.
It's like she's saying, hey, look at the creators, the ones who push boundaries, the entrepreneurs.
The innovators, right. Those are the ones who really make things happen.
But some would say there's a cost to all that striving.
A dark side.
Yeah, maybe. Like,
Yeah.
What about the people who get left behind?
It's a criticism you hear a lot about Rand, that she didn't really care about the vulnerable.
No empathy for the people who just couldn't keep up in her world.
She really pushed back against altruism, saw it as a weakness even, like
Right.
something that held people back from their potential.
So it all comes down to rational self-interest then.
That was her bedrock. You take care of your own happiness, That's your moral duty, first and foremost.
Which sounds kind of radical when you think about it.
Right.
Like, today we're all about compassion, helping others.
It goes against a lot of what we're taught, right? That we should sacrifice for the greater good. But Rand flipped that on its head.
So in her view, by being selfish, in a way, you're actually helping society.
That's the idea. It unleashes creativity, innovation, progress, all the good stuff, in theory.
But I mean, what about the people who can't compete? The sick, the elderly, those who need help.
Yeah, that's where it gets complicated. And it's a point a lot of her critics bring up, that her philosophy could lead to, well, a pretty brutal world for those who are struggling.
Where the strong just like trample over the weak to get what they want.
Right. So it becomes this question, how do we balance things out? How do we have individual freedom, but also create a just society?
Where everyone has a chance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one. No easy answers. But that's also what makes Ayn Rand so interesting, I think. She makes you wrestle with these questions.
About morality, government, freedom, responsibility, it's all in there.
And we have to remember, like, where she came from. She saw the dark side of collectivism firsthand.
Escaping Soviet Russia, I mean, that shaped her entire worldview.
No wonder she was so fiercely pro-capitalism. Individual liberty was everything to her.
Exactly. And it wasn't just dry philosophy either. She was a novelist at heart.
A storyteller.
Yeah. She used these big characters to, like, embody her ideas.
Like Howard Vork, the architect in The Fountainhead, refusing to compromise.
And John Galtz, that mysterious figure in Atlas Shrugged, leading the rebellion. People connect with that stuff.
It taps into this, like, primal desire we all have, right? To be free, to express ourselves, to break away from conformity.
And that's, I think, why Ayn Rand's work still resonates today. That yearning for autonomy, that desire to shape your own destiny.
It's kind of crazy how relevant her work still is, you know? Like, all these years later, we're still arguing about the stuff she wrote about.
Individualism, capitalism, the role of government, right? Like, those are big questions that never really go away.
And her work, it makes you think about, like, the balance between what you want as an individual and what we owe to each other.
The whole freedom versus responsibility thing, exactly. And how much power the government should have, what values should guide us. It's all connected.
It feels, I don't know, like a lot of what she warned about is kind of happening now, right?
Oh, for sure. Like, think about economic inequality, political polarization, people losing trust in institutions.
Yeah, it's like she saw some of this coming. The dangers of too much collectivism, stifling innovation, this, like, bureaucratic elite taking over.
And people feel that. Like, they see it happening around them.
But there's also that that risk, right?
Yeah.
That if you take her ideas too far, it just becomes like everyone for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Like, what happens to the idea of shared responsibility?
Right. How do we make sure we're not just creating a world where the strong win and everyone else loses? It's tricky.
It is. It's about finding that balance, encouraging people to achieve, but also making sure we have a just society, a fair one.
Where everyone has a chance. It's something I think that Ayn Rand struggled with too. Like, even in her own work, it's complicated.
There's no easy answers, which is, I think, what makes it so engaging.
It's like she forces you to look at your own beliefs, your own values, see things from different perspectives.
Whether you agree with her or not, it's a conversation worth having.
So, big picture, what do we take away from all this? Like, what's Ayn Rand's legacy, really?
For me, it's that she makes you think. She challenges the way things are. And people feel strongly about her work, one way or another.
And that's powerful. It reminds us that ideas matter. They shape how we see the world, how we act, how we build societies.
Absolutely. And if you're, curious about her, looking for something to really make you think, I'd say go for it. Explore her work.
See what you think. You might be surprised. And you might find yourself, like, totally absorbed by her world. This world where individual power is everything, where reason rules, where pursuing your own happiness is, like, the most important thing.
It's a vision that continues to inspire and provoke, to challenge and, captivate people. For better or for worse, it's a world that bears her mark.
Well, that's our deep dive into Ayn Rand. We hope you enjoyed it. And hey, maybe you'll be inspired to do your own exploring of her work and the ideas she put out there.
Yeah, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.